Ethan Cole had been flying cargo ships for 7 years. He had crossed human space, visited distant colonies, and even landed on worlds where the air shimmered with strange colors. But nothing had prepared him for this trade station. The docking bay was alive with noise and smell. Engines roared in the background. Alien voices mixed with the calls of human traders. The air was heavy with the scent of spices and strange fruits. Some smells were sweet, others were sharp, almost biting at the nose. Metal floors shook under the weight of moving cargo haulers. Bright lights reflected off silver walls, making the place feel like a living machine. Ethan walked down the ramp of his ship, the Star Runner, with a crate balanced on one shoulder. He wore his usual flight jacket, dark and a little worn, with a patch showing the symbol of the Earth Trade Guild. As he moved through the bay, he nodded to other crew members, keeping his eyes open. Trade stations were busy, but they were also dangerous. A man who did not pay attention could lose his cargo, his ship, or worse. While he worked, something caught his attention. It was not a sound. It was not the smell of fruit or the hum of the engines. It was movement. In the far corner of the docking bay, half hidden behind a stack of crates, stood a girl. At first, Ethan thought she was human, but as he looked closer, he saw the truth. Her skin was pale green, soft and smooth like the surface of a leaf in sunlight. Her hair was silver, catching the station lights like threads of metal, and her eyes were golden, not just in color but glowing faintly, like they held a small sun inside. She was small, slender, and dressed in a loose tunic made from a strange shimmering fabric. In her arms, pressed close to her chest, she held 2 large fruits. They were bright and round, almost the size of her head. They glowed faintly, with a gentle light. Ethan had never seen anything like them. She stood very still, watching the crowd, her eyes moving from one face to another. There was tension in the way she held her shoulders. Her grip on the fruit was tight, as if she feared someone might take it away. Every few seconds, she shifted her weight, like she was ready to run. Ethan set down his crate and took a step closer. Before he could speak, the girl turned her head and looked directly at him, her eyes locked onto his. There was no hesitation. She took a small breath, then spoke in clear but careful English. "I know humans love melons." The words hung in the air. A few nearby humans laughed. One man called out, "She's not wrong," and slapped his friend on the back. Another shook his head with a grin. They all thought it was a joke. Ethan did not laugh. He noticed the small tremor in her voice. Her hands were shaking. Her golden eyes stayed fixed on him, as if she was waiting for him to respond. He walked closer, keeping his movements calm. "What kind of melons are those?" he asked. His voice was steady, but inside, his mind was working fast. The girl tilted her head slightly. Her eyes flicked to the crowd around them, then back to him. "They are not for eating," she said quietly. "They are for safety." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Safety? From what?" She glanced again at the people nearby. A group of alien traders walked past, their tall, insect-like bodies clicking as they moved. The girl took a small step back, clutching the glowing fruits even tighter. "Not here," she said. Her voice was still soft, but there was a firmness beneath it. "Too many ears." Ethan studied her for a moment. Something about her felt different. It was not just her alien beauty. It was the weight in her eyes, the way she carried herself. She was young, but she carried fear like an old wound. The sound of a cargo loader passing by forced Ethan to step aside. When he looked back, the girl had shifted deeper into the shadows, still watching him. For a moment, he considered walking away. He had deliveries to make, and no time for strange mysteries. But then he saw it again. That flicker in her hands, that tiny shake, and behind her soft smile, something else, something sharp, something dangerous. Ethan took a slow breath. He had seen fear before. He had seen people hiding things, protecting them with their lives. This girl was not joking. Her words about humans and melons might have sounded silly to the others, but to him, they were a signal that something was wrong. The station loudspeakers crackled with announcements in half a dozen languages. Ships were arriving. Others were leaving. Somewhere far below, engines roared like thunder. Ethan looked at the girl one more time. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's talk." Her eyes widened slightly, as if she had not expected him to agree. She gave the smallest nod, then turned and began walking toward a narrow service corridor at the edge of the bay. Her steps were quick and silent. The glowing fruits in her arms pulsed softly with light, like a heartbeat. Ethan followed her into the shadows. He did not know where this path would lead, but he knew one thing. This was no ordinary delivery, and this was no ordinary girl. The service corridor was narrow and dim. Pipes ran along the walls, dripping with condensation. The sound of the docking bay faded behind them, replaced by the hum of machinery deep within the station. The air here was cooler, sharper, as if the walls were holding their breath. Ethan followed the alien girl in silence. She moved quickly but carefully, her bare feet making almost no sound on the metal floor. The glowing fruits in her arms lit the path in a soft green-gold light. It reminded Ethan of lanterns in a dark forest. After several turns, they stopped in a small maintenance room. The door slid shut behind them with a soft hiss. For a moment, neither spoke. The girl set the fruits down on a low table, still keeping one hand on them. Ethan leaned against the wall, folding his arms. "All right," he said. "You said these melons are for safety. What does that mean?" The girl looked at him for a long moment, as if measuring him. Then she spoke. "My name is Lyra. I come from the world of Selenia. It is far from here, beyond your human maps." Her voice was soft, but her words were steady. Ethan nodded for her to continue. "These fruits are not food. They are life cores. They can change a dead world into a living one in a single day." She touched the surface of one melon with gentle fingers. "The seeds inside can grow forests, rivers, and skies full of clean air. My people use them to heal damaged worlds." Ethan raised his eyebrows. "Sounds valuable." Her golden eyes darkened. "That is the problem. Others want them for war." He frowned. "War? How can a melon be a weapon?" Lyra looked down at the glowing fruit. "In the wrong hands, the life energy can be twisted. It can strip a planet bare instead of restoring it. It can turn seas into deserts. It can take the breath from every living thing." Ethan let that sink in. He had seen greed destroy colonies before, but never with something like this. "So who is after you?" Before she could answer, a sharp beep echoed from somewhere in the room. Lyra froze. Her eyes went to a small device on the wall. It was flashing red. "They found me," she whispered. Ethan pushed away from the wall. "Who raiders?" "They have been following me for 3 cycles. They tracked my signal. They want the cores." Her voice was tight now, her earlier calm gone. She reached for the fruits and lifted them back into her arms. "If they get them, entire systems will burn." A loud metallic clang echoed through the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps followed, slow and deliberate. Ethan's instincts flared. Whoever was coming was not here to talk. Lyra looked at him, her voice low but urgent. "You have a ship. You can leave this place. Take me with you. I can pay." Ethan hesitated, for only a second. This was not his problem. He could walk away, finish his delivery, and never see her again. But something inside him would not allow it. He remembered the look in her eyes when she first spoke to him. It was not just fear, it was hope. He nodded once. "Stayed close to me." The door shook under a heavy impact. Another clang rang through the room, this one stronger. A deep voice shouted in a language Ethan did not understand. Lyra tightened her grip on the melons. The glow from them pulsed brighter, casting strange shadows on the walls. Ethan stepped toward the door, ready to move the moment it opened. The footsteps outside grew louder. The station felt smaller, as if the walls were pressing in. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat. This was about to get very dangerous, very fast. Lyra's eyes met his. "Do not let them touch the cores," she said firmly. "If you do, it will be the end of more than just me." The door gave a final shudder. The lock began to hiss. Ethan's muscles tensed. Whoever was on the other side was seconds away from breaking in. And in that moment, he realized something. He was no longer just a cargo pilot. He was now the guardian of something that could change the fate of entire worlds. The door burst open with a violent crash. Metal bent and screeched as the lock gave way. 3 figures stepped inside. They were tall, broad, and covered in armor that looked pieced together from old battles. Their helmets were shaped like the skulls of some long-dead predator. Red light glowed from their visors. Each one carried a long rifle slung across their chest. The leader stepped forward. His voice was deep and sharp, speaking in a language Ethan did not know. But the meaning was clear when he pointed at Lyra's glowing melons. Lyra backed away until she was pressed against the far wall. Her grip on the fruits tightened. The light from them seemed to grow stronger, as if they could feel her fear. Ethan stepped in front of her. "You're not taking them," he said, his voice low but steady. The leader tilted his head. Through the red visor, Ethan could feel the weight of his stare. Then the leader gave a short signal. The other 2 moved forward. Ethan's hand went to the small stun pistol on his belt. It was not strong enough to pierce heavy armor, but it could buy them seconds. He aimed at the nearest raider and fired. The shot hit the raider's chest with a sharp flash. The impact knocked him back a step, but it was not enough to stop him. He raised his rifle. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm. "Move." They darted past the nearest raider, the glowing fruits bouncing in her arms. The second raider tried to block them, but Ethan slammed his shoulder into him. Pain shot through Ethan's body, but the raider stumbled, giving them an opening. They ran into the corridor, boots and bare feet pounding against the metal floor. The sound of pursuit followed instantly. The raiders moved fast for their size. Ethan turned a corner and almost collided with a group of alien traders. The crowd shouted in confusion as the chase plowed through. Crates fell. Spices spilled into the air. The sweet and sharp scents mixed with the metallic taste of adrenaline in Ethan's mouth. Lyra's breathing was quick and uneven. She kept glancing behind them. "They will not stop," she said between breaths. "They know what I carry." Ethan scanned the signs overhead. The station was a maze of narrow paths and wide open bays. He needed a route to his ship. "Dock 6, he said. "Can you keep running?" She nodded, though her face was pale. The fruits glowed brighter with every step, casting moving shadows along the walls. They reached a large transport lift. Ethan slammed the panel. The doors began to close, but a red armored hand shot through the gap. Ethan kicked the arm hard. The raider growled in pain and pulled back. The doors shut, and the lift began to rise. For a moment, they had space to breathe. Ethan leaned against the wall, still holding his pistol. Lyra clutched the melons close. Her eyes met his. "You could have left me," she said softly. "You would be safer." Ethan shook his head. "Not my style." The lift stopped with a sudden jolt. The lights flickered. A cold voice came over the station's intercom in an alien tongue, followed by a translation. "Attention. All docking bays are sealed. This is a security operation. No ships may depart." Lyra's eyes widened. They control the station now, Ethan. Mind raced. If the raiders had locked the bays, escaping would be far harder. He glanced at the glowing fruits. "Then we make them open it for us." The lift doors slid open, revealing Dock 6. From here, Ethan could see the Star Runner waiting, lights on and ramped down. But between them and the ship stood 6 more raiders, rifles ready. Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. "They will shoot to kill." Ethan tightened his grip on his pistol. Then we make the first move. Ethan did not wait for the raiders to make the first move. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the nearest row of cargo crates. Blaster fire ripped through the air, leaving bright streaks of light across the docking bay. Metal sparked. Where shots hit, the smell of burned steel, mixing with the thick scent of fuel. They ducked behind a stack of containers. Ethan fired 2 quick stun shots over the top, forcing the raiders to spread out. But there were too many. 6 in front, and more would be coming. Lyra crouched low, holding the melons close. Her voice was urgent. We cannot fight them all. We must blind them. How? Ethan asked, his eyes scanning for a gap. She glanced at one of the fruits. The glow inside it seemed stronger now, pulsing like a living heart. If I break the skin, the light will spread. It will burn the eyes for a short time. Short time, Ethan repeated. How short? Enough to run, she said firmly. There was no time to argue. Ethan nodded. Do it. Lyra set one melon on the floor and pressed her fingers into its glowing surface. The skin split with a soft tearing sound. Light poured out, brighter than a welding torch, filling the space between the crates. Shouts erupted from the raiders. Some covered their visors, stumbling as the light stabbed into their eyes. Others fired wildly, their shots hitting walls and floors instead of targets. Ethan pulled Lyra to her feet. Move. They sprinted from the crates, weaving through the chaos. The blinding light turned the world into a storm of white and shadow. Every step was a risk, but the raiders were too disoriented to aim. They reached the ramp of the Star Runner. Ethan slapped the control panel. The ship's engines roared to life, vibrating the metal under their feet. Lyra ran up the ramp first, still clutching the remaining melon. Ethan followed, firing one last stun shot at a raider, trying to recover. Inside, the ship felt like a safe pocket of space, but only for a moment. Ethan rushed to the cockpit, throwing himself into the pilot's seat. Lyra strapped in behind him. The comm system crackled. A cold alien voice ordered them to stand down. Outside, the bay doors remained sealed, locking them inside the station. Ethan's hands danced across the controls. They are not opening it, Lyra said. They will, Ethan replied. His voice was calm, but his pulse was racing. He triggered the ship's forward thrusters, pushing against the sealed door. The hull shook from the strain. Alarms screamed across the bay. The station's defenses powered up, tracking the Star Runner with automated guns. Ethan swerved the ship just as a blast hit the floor, where they had been seconds before. Lyra gripped the armrest, her golden eyes locked on him. You are risking your life for me, she said softly. Ethan smirked, even in the chaos. Guess I like melons more than I thought. A sudden tremor rocked the ship. One of the raiders had fired a grappling hook, clamping onto the hull. Ethan could see it on the rear camera feed, a thick cable, linking them to the docking bay wall. They are holding us, Lyra said, her voice sharp. Ethan's eyes darted to the melon in her arms. Can it do more than blind people? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, but it will not be safe for you. He tightened his grip on the controls. Do it anyway. Lyra cradled the melon and whispered something in her language. The glow inside it flared, shifting from warm gold to deep green. She touched the control, paneled with her free hand. The ship's interior lights flickered, then a wave of green energy pulsed outward from the melon, through the hull. On the rear feed, Ethan watched the grappling cables snap, as if cut by invisible blades. The waves spread across the docking bay, sending raiders sprawling and freezing the station's defense guns in mid-movement. Hang on, Ethan said. He slammed the throttle forward. The Star Runner surged ahead, smashing through the bay doors in a storm of sparks and twisted metal. Beyond the breach was open space, dark and endless, dotted with stars. The ship cleared the station, leaving alarms and chaos behind. Lyra leaned back in her seat, her breathing slow but steady now. She still held the melon close, as if it were more than just an object. Ethan glanced at her. All right. You owe me a real explanation. Her golden eyes met his. You saved more than me tonight, she said softly. But if they follow us, you will see how dangerous this really is. Ethan kept his gaze on the stars ahead, but inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The Star Runner glided through the dark between stars. The station was far behind them now, but Ethan knew the raiders would not stop. People like that never stopped, not when something this valuable was at stake. The cockpit was quiet, except for the steady hum of the engines. Lyra sat in the co-pilot seat, holding the last melon close. Her fingers traced the glowing lines on its surface, as if the patterns were a language only she could read. Ethan broke the silence. That thing saved our lives back there. How far can its power go? She looked at him for a moment, before answering. It can do many things. It can grow life where there is none. It can heal a poisoned world. It can bring back rivers, forests, an air that is clean to breathe. Her voice softened, but it can also be twisted into the opposite. Ethan leaned back in his seat. And your world, Selenia, what happened to it? Her eyes lowered to the glowing fruit in her lap. It is dying. The soil is dry. The oceans are empty. My people are scattered across space, living as guests on other worlds. If we cannot restore Selenia soon, our culture will fade. Our children will grow up on alien ground, and they will forget the sky of their ancestors. The pain in her voice was quiet, but heavy. Ethan could feel it. It was the kind of pain that stayed with a person for life. He kept his voice calm. So this melon is your world's last hope? She nodded. It is the last seed core from our farms. The others were taken or destroyed. I was sent to bring it home. But the raiders, they were faster than we expected. Ethan looked at the stars outside. I can take you there. Her head snapped up. Why? You are human. You owe us nothing. He gave a small shrug. Maybe. But I'm not the type to watch someone's world die, if I can do something about it. He smiled faintly. Besides, I'm starting to like you. A soft color touched her cheeks. For a moment, her golden eyes looked warmer. You are strange for a human, she said gently. The ship's sensors beeped, breaking the moment. Ethan leaned forward, checking the display. 3 ships had appeared behind them, moving fast. Their signatures matched the raiders. They found us, Ethan said. His voice stayed calm, but his hands tightened on the controls. Lyra straightened in her seat. They will chase us until they have the core. We must lose them before we reach Ethan adjusted the ships heading toward a dense asteroid field on the nav screen. It's risky, but they won't be able to follow us through there at full speed. The asteroids came into view, a drifting sea of rock and ice, turning slowly, in the dark. Some were as small as shuttles, others the size of cities. Ethan pushed the throttle. The Star Runner dove into the field, weaving between massive boulders. The raiders followed, their weapons firing. Bright flashes lit the rocks. Around them, each impact sending shards into space. Lyra held the core tight as the ship rolled to avoid a collision. You are flying like a madman, she said, but there was a hint of admiration in her voice. Ethan grinned briefly. Madman gets us out alive. A large asteroid rotated ahead, blocking the path. Instead of turning away, Ethan pulled the ship sideways and skimmed along its surface, so close that the hull scraped stone. The raiders tried to follow, but one struck a smaller rock, spinning out of control. One down, Ethan muttered. They shot out of the asteroid field minutes later. The remaining 2 raider ships still behind them, but farther away. For now, they had space. Lyra finally relaxed in her seat. You risked everything again, she said. Softly. Even your ship could have been destroyed. Ethan glanced at her. Ships can be repaired. Worlds can't. Her golden eyes stayed on him for a long moment. Then she leaned back, holding the melon close like a child holding a heartbeat. Outside, the stars stretched ahead, leading them toward a dying world and a fight neither of them could avoid. The Star Runner entered the Selenia system 2 days later. The dying world came into view, floating alone in the dark. From orbit, Ethan could see the scars. The land was cracked and dry, like the skin of an old riverbed. The seas were dark gray, still and lifeless. Clouds hung low and heavy, not with rain, but with dust. Lyra sat forward, her golden eyes locked on the view. "This is my home," she whispered. Her voice trembled, but not from fear. It was the sound of someone seeing a lost dream. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but the ship's alarm cut him off. 3 signatures appeared on the scanner. The raiders had found them again, and this time they were ready for war. The lead ship was larger than the others, bristling with weapons. The comm channel opened with a hiss, and a deep voice spoke in broken English. "Give us the core, human. You live, refuse, and we take it from your cold hands." Ethan shut off the channel. Not happening. The raider ships closed in fast. Beams of red light sliced past the Star Runner, close enough to make the hull shudder. Ethan pushed the ship lower, skimming the planet's atmosphere. The friction lit the edges of the hull in orange fire. "They are following," Lyra said, gripping the melon tight. "Good," Ethan replied. "I'm going to make them regret it." He dove toward the surface, heading for a wide canyon. Dust and stone whipped past the cockpit as they dropped into the narrow gorge. The walls rose high on both sides, forcing the raiders to follow single file. Ethan flicked a switch on the console. "Hold on." The ship spun sideways, skimming the canyon wall so close that pieces of rock tore free and crashed into the raiders behind. One ship clipped the wall and exploded in a flash of fire. The shockwave rattled the Star Runner, but Ethan kept going. The remaining 2 ships fired relentlessly, their blasts throwing up clouds of dust that blinded sensors. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Time to even the odds. He pulled up hard, shooting out of the canyon and into the open sky. The raiders followed, but that was the mistake he wanted. "Lyra," he said quickly, "the core, can it make a storm?" She hesitated. "Yes, but it will drain most of its life force." "We only need it once," Ethan said. She placed the melon in the center of the cockpit and pressed her hands against it. A green light spread through the controls, into the ship's hull, and then out into the air around them. Below, the barren land began to shift. Wind roared across the plains. Clouds formed in seconds, swirling into a massive spiral. Lightning cracked across the sky, bright and sharp. The raider ships flew into the storm, their engines struggling against the violent winds. One was struck by lightning, its system sparking before it spun out of control and crashed into the desert below. The last ship fought to escape, but Ethan was already diving through the storm toward it. He angled the Star Runner straight at the enemy and fired the ship's last missiles. The impact tore the raider's engines apart, sending it tumbling into the darkness of the storm. The sky slowly calmed. The winds died. Lyra slumped in her seat, the melon dimmer now, but still alive. Her breathing was heavy, but she smiled faintly. Ethan turned the ship toward the surface. "We made it." She looked at him with tired but bright eyes. "No, Ethan, you saved it. My world still has a chance. Because of you." As they descended toward the cracked plains where the melon would be planted, Ethan felt the weight of what they had just done. Not just surviving, not just winning. They had given a dying planet a heartbeat again. The Star Runner touched down on the cracked plains of Selenia. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground was a dull gray, broken into jagged plates. The wind carried the scent of dust and dry stone. Nothing here moved. Nothing sang. Lyra stepped out first, cradling the last melon core. Her bare feet sank into the soft dust. She stood there for a moment, looking at the horizon, as if she could see the ghosts of her people's past. Golden light from the melon washed over her face, making her eyes shine even brighter. Ethan followed, the dry air catching in his throat. "This is it?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "This is the place, the heart of Salonia. If life returns here, it will spread to every corner of the world." She knelt and placed the melon in a shallow hollow in the ground. Her hands pressed gently on its surface. A soft hum filled the air, low at first, then rising like a song carried on the wind. Ethan stepped back as the melon began to glow brighter and brighter. The cracks in the ground lit up with thin green lines, spreading out like veins. The dust trembled. The air changed. From the center of the hollow, a small green shoot pushed through the dry soil. Then another, and another. In seconds, they were tall enough to sway in the new wind. Grass spread outward in all directions, covering the dead earth with living color. The sky above cleared, revealing a soft blue that had not been seen here in generations. Lyra stood slowly, her face wet with tears. "It is breathing again," she whispered. Ethan looked around, almost forgetting to breathe himself. It was like watching the world wake up from a long sleep. More plants rose from the ground. In the distance, water began to pool where the earth dipped low. Bird-like shapes appeared far off, as if called from hiding. Lyra turned to him. Her golden eyes were full of gratitude, but also something warmer. "You could have taken the core and sold it for more than your ship is worth. You could have walked away on that station, but you stayed. You fought. You gave my people a future." Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe humans really do love melons." She laughed softly, the sound like wind through new leaves. Then she stepped forward and hugged him. It was not the quick embrace of thanks. It was the kind that says two lives are now tied together. Around them, Selenia continued to change. The green spread toward the horizon. Rivers began to sparkle under the growing sun, and the air grew thick with the smell of rain that had not yet fallen. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of her in his arms and the heartbeat of a planet under his boots. When they finally stepped back, Lyra's voice was steady. "There will be others who want to take this from us. The raiders will not be the last." Ethan glanced at the growing fields, then back at her. "Then you won't face them alone." The camera of this story would pull back now. Two figures standing in the middle of a world being reborn, a human and an alien. The first defenders of something far greater than themselves, and in that wide shot, the rebirth of Selenia was clear proof of what humans could do when they chose to fight for more than just themselves. It was not just survival, it was hope. It was humanity.